Let's start with you, Katrin. What is the future retail?
Ooh, the $10 million question.
Yes, $10 billion question even. So.
I think there's no easy answer to that question. But I think what we all see is the digitalization of the whole retail space, if you will. I mean, we listened to Sverker just now. And that is something that's changing the way we shop, the way we communicate, the way we take in information. So I think that is going to influence the future of retail in a big, big way.
You agree?
The future, of course, it depends on the time perspective. Is it in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? If we look 10 years back, I mean, has it changed a lot or not? What we can see is that we sell more of different kinds of sustainable food, like vegetarian food, organic food. We can also see that the customers are more aware about sustainability in general. For example, food waste, that's your area. And we can see that customers are more interested in convenient food. And we can see that digitalization and shopping online is growing really fast. Maybe the last 3 years in Sweden, I would say. And maybe this development will go on for some years. But if we look very far ahead, I think there will be a mixture of stores and shopping online, but also that we will see stores that will be very different, some with a great personal service, and maybe other shops without staff at all.
Yeah, so a great mix. So we're kind of used to a system today where everything basically looks the same, even though they have various logotypes on them, but carry the same products, look and feel basically the same. But you're talking about a new variety, like a multi-dimensional system here. So I think this is really interesting. And Ludwig, I mean, like, how come a guy like you sit on a panel about retail?
I wonder myself.
No, of course. But isn't it interesting that you started out working with restaurants and now you work a lot with retail?
Yeah.
So tell me, what is a typical Karma customer doing in the retail store?
So basically, I mean, the biggest change for us coming from the restaurant industry and going into the retail industries, we see that usually, the stores often already have a process in place for how to work with surplus. When we worked in the restaurant industry, it's been more of like educating the market, really, that you can do something good with your surplus. So it's often very easy for us to hook on to existing processes. The biggest change that we've seen, and going back to what's been mentioned here before, is sort of bridging the gap between online and offline. And I think for the future coming, I think it's going to be a long time before we stop seeing physical stores at all. But bridging the gap between having physical stores and an online experience, that's where I think the future is going to. So, I mean, in our case, when we hook on to the surplus processes in a store, what we basically do is we, at the very earlier stage, sort of market the surplus to consumers. So instead of having consumers finding out about discounted goods while they're in store, we now can have them actually getting the stores top of mind already early in the morning, thanks to our platform.
Okay, so that's what. What would be the Ocado take on waste? Like?
Well, I think obviously people who shop a lot of food online, that goes without saying. But I think the other big shift we're going to see is the resurgence of the small grocery store, because the technology that we use to fulfill online orders, that is to pick single items automatically in a big facility, that can also be used to give a much broader range to a small store. So today a small store has to buy 10 of everything. The only way they can get anything is to buy 10. And if you're a small store, that might take 6 months to sell, so you're not going to bother. But in the future, when you can get at a low cost, you can get one of something, that means you can have much bigger range, you can have much fresher goods, less waste to some extent, but also then much more convenience. And also in that little store, you will always have the ability to get the full big range that you order online for collection in 2-3 hours or tomorrow or something. So you have the immediacy of the little store, the proximity, it's very close to get there, but you still have the full range of the big supermarket. perhaps with a 2 or 3 hour time lapse. So that you, and even if you're in the countryside, you know, way up north, you still have it for next day. So instead of having to drive 60 kilometers to some big store somewhere, you can have it in your local little shop in the village, the full range, because there's one truck every day that comes with that for everyone, exactly what they wanted. So those, I think, are the big changes.
So you mean that when I'm at the fishmonger's, you know, buying my oysters or whatever it is, I can say, oh, by the way, some toilet paper, detergent, and oil for the tractor.
Perhaps that, or the other way around, actually, that when you go to buy the toilet paper, you can also get the oysters.
Okay, whatever, I'll get my oysters, that's for sure. No, but Åsa, I must ask you, when you see if the future of retail, I mean, like, it's so easy for someone like me to always see digital, but I suspect you see more sustainable future.
Yes, and I mean, the digital way can be a part of the sustainable way as well. We can see on our online sales, we sell much more different kinds of sustainable food, and that's very interesting. Then the big issue is, of course, the transport. How will it change? Will we have an explosion of small vans in the cities where the different competitors working with online shopping? That could be a problem. On the other hand, it could also be a solution. Maybe less people would choose to own a car at all if it would be more practical to shop things online and get other services online as well. But then one huge problem with online shopping is that there is no shopping available for the people who really need it, because there isn't much of online possibilities when it comes to food in the countryside in Sweden. Often if you get only 20 minutes from a city, maybe there is no alternative at all.
So you can't shop online everywhere in Sweden?
No, not at all. I mean, in Stockholm, the bigger the city, the more possibilities.
So, and we listened before that to, if you remember, James Early from Regent Villages, where he talks about building an infrastructure of small villages around to support us. Those villages wouldn't be able to shop online then?
I think they will.
They will in the future, because we will solve the logistics, right?
Yes, I hope so. But I mean, the challenge is, of course, the logistics.
The challenge is...
Or maybe people could help each other. I mean, maybe your kind of solutions in the mobile phone, maybe people could pick up some food in a small store in the country and bring food to their neighbors.
Okay, so I'm passing by anyway, and then we can track that. So could you please pick up for Mrs. Anderson here?
Yes, I'm talking about some kind of social invention to solve the logistic problem.
Interesting. So Ludwig, tell me a bit more about when you work with sustainability issues in stores, and what is it typically that you sell online then at Karma?
So when it comes to stores, we have started shifting more. So when we got our foot in the door, really, we started working with ready-made meals, so like salads, cold meals, and so on. But from then, we have started shifted over onto more or less everyday goods. So we're selling milk, cheese, sausages, sort of any sort of fresh goods that has a best before date. And it's really cool because we start seeing the same sort of basket behavior, really, that you could see in other online stores, that when people using Karma previously only bought like one meal, they now start adding many items into their basket. So that's really cool.
That's really cool. So you're taking over the stores now?
At least when it comes to the surplus.
At least when it comes to the surplus. Interesting. So could I buy on Coop.se, for instance, could I buy things that expire soon?
You can, absolutely. And those things that we don't sell, that expire soon, we actually donate them to charity. So we don't We don't waste them. We don't.
Okay,
throw them
so
away.
I can actually choose to shop soon to expire type of goods.
It's on
It's a
its
filter.
way to mark them clearly, so it will be easier. But we do have that in mind for the future.
And Sverker, what would you say? Do you have any soon to expire goods in?
Well, of course we do, but we sell since we have this idea with a big warehouse mainly. That means that we every day from a big warehouse sells the same amount of stuff that a small store does in a month. That means that we have extremely low waste in the store. It's like typically around 1/10 of the normal bricks and mortar store. But even, of course, we have some, and since we're big, that becomes quite a lot anyway. So we give that to charity. We sell it to the staff. And we, in the worst case, we give it to the zoo if it's really bad.
Okay. so the ice bears, they can devour
It's
anything.
typically stuff that's been on the road and been returned. So if you've had some meatballs on the road for a day, it's totally unsafe for human consumption, but it's okay for lions.
Okay. Yeah. And they live and thrive. Okay, wonderful. It's good for
And
the
we
lions.
also actually have a system in our stores and in our warehouses where we can track the food. So we actually get an alarm beeping if we have things on the shelf that is starting to.
So also, if you compare the situation today when it comes to sustainability, for instance, in the stores, compared to say take 10 or 15 years ago, have we improved a lot when it comes to sustainability?
I think we have improved, actually. What we can see is the growing consumption of meat is broken. And now we have a flat curve. It started to, the meat consumption started to grow when Sweden became a member of the European Union. But now we have a flat curve, and maybe the consumption of red meat will go down, because at the same time we see a fast growth when it comes to vegetarian food. And I think people become much more aware and ask more questions about flight transported food and so on. We have a much higher amount of organic sales than we had before as well. Okay. But of course there is a lot to do. And now we see a growing awareness about packaging and plastics.
Okay. So packaging plastics, that's the new organic, so to say. Okay.
Could be, yes.
Interesting. And of course, it's interesting, when you move over to the online environment, you have the powers to nudge people to make other types of decisions than they typically make in a store. Sverker, how do you work with nudging? Do you have this algorithms pushing us in the positive direction, or? Oh,
right now, well, we mainly push them in the direction that the customer wants, as it were. So we figure out what they want, and we reinforce that, really. We have a very strong requirement to cut down on plastic. That is extremely strong for us too. Also in England, so it's not only a Swedish thing; it's definitely a global thing. And we, in England, we have to charge money for the plastic bags that we sell, but with them we buy them back. So we sell you the plastic bag, but we buy it back at the same price. I think that's something that's quite neat. And then we recycle it and make new bags from it. So that's another thing.
Okay. That's good. So I can go and pick avocado bags. No, I can't pick avocado bags because people are recycling them all the time online, of course. But Catherine, nudging. I mean, have you operated a lot of nudging schemes online in order to get the customers where you want to have them?
No, we haven't. We're starting where you are, so to speak, to actually get to know the customer, as you talked about earlier. One of the good things with working online is you can measure everything. You have data, you can get to know your customer, exactly what they like, and you can help them that way. But of course, when we work with that, we also want to promote sustainable products and make people, help them make good choices, healthy choices. And then we can work with these algorithms to actually show them things that are good for them.
Just one comment on nudging. An interesting thing we're doing at Hemköp is that we're putting the vegetarian alternatives close to their meat varieties. For example, falafel next to the meatballs and so on, you understand. And that increased the sales of vegetarian food a lot. And at the same thing with online shopping. Of course, it's a great opportunity to work with nudging. And I think that part of the explanation that we sell so much organic food in online shops.
Okay, that's lovely. And Ludwig, the last question to you here. When it comes to the future of food, I mean, like, isn't it really so that your business model has to be killed?
Yeah, more or less. I would say we're like Tinder. Our best customers are those that stop using us because they don't have the need for it anymore. If anyone gets that sort of point. But definitely, and I think the way at least we see ourselves in the future is that there's such a huge potential in optimizing the resources throughout the whole food chain. So what we've done right now is just a very small fraction of what we see we can do in the future. Because if you look at it at large, like as soon as you sort of solve the food waste issue at the very last stage of food consumption, you're probably just going to push it forward up the chain.
Okay, lovely. That has to be the last word. Thank you very much, panel, for sharing your